Sometimes it does with us. That stuff out.
All right. Welcome to the Appalachian Podcast. I'm your host, Billy Riddle. With me, as always, once again, my co-host, Jeff Taylor, Bodine.
What's up, man?
We also got the Crumb Snatcher, Dean Motley, with us for this podcast. We're back on the Zoom, so he's able to jump in on a lot of these up there in the holler. How's it going?
Oh, yeah.
The holler.
Doing good, man. Back one more time.
Good. We got an awesome guest here today. Before we get to her, I want to go back to Bodine, and this is probably uncouth. We should jump straight to her. But Bodine, you recently were suspended or banned on an iRacing league.
Well, I haven't found out yet.
Still
waiting on the decision.
For threatening to shove a black flag up somebody's anal cavity.
Well, yeah, technically I did. So last night we were doing Indy 500 practice, and we put a lot of time into this. And every restart, the guys were running over us, like from behind. The guys doing it on purpose, like legit, like just running over us. And I finally snapped. I told him, I said, I've had enough of bleepity bleep bleep. And the race director come over the microphone and he said, we're going to black flag you if you don't, calm down. And I said, you stick that black flag up your, and then I said a few other things, and then I questioned his ancestry. That was it. So I have waiting on the decision. I know it was the major series league, so it wasn't just iRacing, it was majors.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right, we're gonna get to our guest.
I mean, he was some little Irish punk, anyways. Liam. Need Liam on this podcast.
I'm sure your mom will be proud of you.
He gonna black flag me, but these fools in the back of the pack destroying every race car in the field. He gonna worry about me. Yeah.
All right. I don't even know how we got to this point.
You opened that
in humanity.
You've opened that can of worms.
Well, I was looking for maybe something a little bit more elaborate, but so we're back today.
I'll find a replay.
We're back with the racing theme. Our guest, somebody a lot of you all may recognize, you may know. She's been on quite a few telecasts for quite a few different channels, radio, media. And recently, for a lot of our listeners, you're going to recognize her from her stint at Bowman Gray in the booth with Matthew Dillner for the modified race last weekend that had that controversial caution flag. But we'll get to all that. But Miss Jacklyn, Jake, we appreciate you joining us here today. How you doing down there in Carolina?
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Today is a beautiful day in North Carolina. I can't ask for much better weather. But it's even more beautiful because I'm right here on the podcast with you guys.
I don't even know how did this even happen? Why did you agree to this? Is kind of be my first question. You seem like you got a little bit more sense in that, but here you are.
You know what? I'm always in for a new experience. So I had seen Matt had come on y'all's podcast, and I had a podcast of my own a few years ago. So I always love to join and chit chat. So why not?
That was a really fun show. I was listening to that a couple of days ago, and for the first time coming up road, I was like, man, we called a stock 4 race with Dillner there in turn 2. And it was actually, I listened back to it. It sounded pretty good, all things considered.
We did something. I don't know if we called the race, but it was fun.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't sound awful bad.
It would help if you get to do research on these things and you know exactly what car is which. I mean, these stock 4 cars, they just showed up. We didn't know who they were, didn't know a thing about them, didn't have a lineup.
You did. The improvisation was great.
A lineup or anything. We could have done better.
The improvisation was great. You all did a great job of coming up with names for those guys, and they were in no way insulting or belittling. What were you going to say, Dean?
So, I was going to say, I know on my end, I had seen where they had done the flow racing thing at Bowman Gray, and I was like, well, we talked to Dillner, so I had done a little research about Jacklyn, and I was like, well, she's got a lot of NASCAR, and racing routes and all kinds of different stuff. So I was like, well, let me reach out to her. Well, I think I might have first sent you a message on Instagram, possibly. And I didn't hear anything back from you. So I was sitting here the other night and I was like, well, that dang on deal in there. He knows her. He can get in touch with her. So I text him and it never showed he read my message. But like 10 minutes later, you messaged me on Twitter then. So I was like, well, maybe he did say something to her then.
No, he never said anything. Maybe he just put good vibes out into the world.
It must have.
I saw your Twitter message and I was like, oh yeah, I would love to join. So I'm flattered to come on here. It's funny that you stumbled upon me on Bowman Gray because I feel like I've been in this roots industry for a really long time. So, and that was my first time calling Bowman Gray. So yeah, that was really cool though, to be a part of the Madhouse.
Well, we certainly appreciate you responding to a message with a handle by the name of Crumb Snatcher. That's certainly in our best interest. And Dean, we thank you for putting us in touch. I guess, so I want to get into this first before we get into the racing. You are originally from Texas, correct?
That's correct.
All right. When it comes to sports, what is the first question anybody ever asks you back east when you say you're from Texas?
Where at in Texas are you from? And I typically say I'm from a small town near Waco, Texas. And that's followed up with, well, have you heard about the Chip and Joanna Gaines? Or followed up with, man, Waco was really crazy back in the day.
Yeah. That goes back to that crazy one event that everybody seems to bring up every year. But you also have Baylor University down there, and I guess they just won the basketball national championship, maybe.
Yeah, I don't even follow Baylor, but they've always been really good in sports, so it was no surprise they are doing well this year too.
Are you people automatically ask you if you're a Cowboys fan?
People do ask me that. They ask me if I'm a Cowboys fan, or they say, what is your football team? And I'm like, the Cowboys. And then they go, well, what about college? And I'm like, go Longhorns.
Oh, man. Well, that's where I was going with that. I guess you're a Cowboys fan. That answers the question.
I love the stereotypes.
Well,
Well, it kind of gets a little bit worse because my hometown in Texas is Maypearl, Texas. So no one's ever heard of Maypearl. And they're like, what is that? And I'm like, well, it was named after two farmers' daughters, May and Pearl. And I grew up on a 70-acre farm there with no stoplights and no grocery store or anything. Now they have a grocery store. So being in a small town, people typically, they're like, what did you do there? How did you even start liking racing? And that tends to open up a lot of questions of concern.
And that's what's interesting to me because thanks to Lost Speedways, I've heard that, Texas's history in racing is just, I don't think what one would assume. It's kind of sporadic, hit and miss, unlike the Southeast. Very different. I mean, there were racetracks, there are racetracks, but Lost Speedways kind of touched on that, how racing is just not, is many tracks. It's not as population. I mean, it's not as dense of tracks as it is here. And also, I mean, it's like high school football is the big thing down there, and college sports are bigger there than we race. So, I mean, I'm like Billy. I'm curious how you got into racing being from Texas.
Yeah, so I will agree with you on the speedway point. There's a lot of dirt tracks in Texas, but they are pretty spaced out. Just the size of the state is huge. So you have to travel quite a bit, and asphalt racing is almost completely extinct in Texas now, which is sad to see that change of evolution of racing. But I started because my father, he raced sprint cars in Texas, and my mother had also raced. So it was in my family to get me involved in racing at a young age. So I had started racing dirt go-karts at 6 years old, as well as my brother. And we primarily raced that in the Fort Worth region before kind of moving up through the ranks as you get older into other series. But for me, it was all family tradition. It's like what you do. I grew up going to the racetrack, watching my dad. My first race ever, I was only 6 weeks old. So of course, when you get older, you're like, oh, I want to do that. I want to try it out. And it was a natural progression for my family.
And of course, just like the Blabanis, you moved east to keep up with it and really get into it.
Yeah, I didn't move until it was 2013. So I guess the whole story. If you guys want me to go into the spill, I will.
I mean,
Absolutely,
I
we're here
love
to talk about
racing
it.
stories. I mean, it's totally up to you.
Yeah, well, so I raced dirt, and my dad had decided he didn't want my brother or I to go into open wheel. So he's like, we have to get you guys into asphalt racing, which required even more traveling. So I started racing quarter midgets, and I raced those in Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, and in Colorado. At that point, I got older, moved into legend cars, and then we raced those at Texas Motor Speedway. They had like a little Texas track. And then I moved into asphalt late models, which I raced at Houston Motorsports Park, which is the only asphalt track still open to this day, circle track in Texas. I started racing those like in my late teens. So I was graduating out of high school. I raced a couple times in my freshman year of college, and it got into this point where, hey, I'm working so much, I can't really dedicate my time to racing. What do you want to do? You're now an adult. So we have to figure out what your next path was. And I was going to college, studying, working full time, trying to get my degree. And I had come to the conclusion that I wanted to stay involved in racing, whether I was competing or not. And I was helping Timmy Hill at the time with his PR while still living in Texas, booking his interviews, developing graphics for other drivers in Texas, websites, doing marketing for them through things that I had learned. And at that point, I had moved in 2013 to Charlotte, which broke both of my parents' heart because that left them an empty nester, but also left them with both of their kids no longer living in Texas. So it was challenging for them to get over what I was doing, but it was beneficial for me both personally and professionally to move to the East.
People in Texas take a lot of pride too. So and then you moved away, and
I love Texas. I love going, we used to go out there quite a bit when I was over the road, and I flew out there a couple times. I was out there for AIT training in the military. Of course, that wasn't anything glorious, and it was El Paso, so nothing to write home about. But I love Austin. Austin's a really good time. I'd like to go there for the COTA race at some point. That'd be a good time, it looks like.
That track is beautiful. I went there for the first time I guess it was April where they raced, and it's awesome. Like especially the red, white, blue theme is just so patriotic. You can't help but like the Austin weather there. And of course the food and barbecue. It's a good vibe.
Bowden, you've never been to Texas, have you?
flew over it a couple times.
That doesn't count.
I've been to Fort Worth and Dallas. Stayed actually some friends in Roanoke, Texas, around where the track's at there. So yeah, been down there once. Loved it.
If I'm not mistaken, one of the lost speedways was featured in San Antonio. Yep, San Antonio Speedway.
Yep.
Yeah, there was another track like a few miles down the road from it. That's been a while since I saw that episode, but yeah, Texas, it's a lot of fun. I like the people down there, and it probably wasn't much of a culture shock you coming from small town Texas to rural, North Carolina. It was probably a fairly easy transition. No,
it was not easy for me.
Really? I think everybody was just kind of the same nice and welcoming people. I figured it'd been an easy transition.
Yeah, I'd say the people were nice. The transition for me was I had to recalibrate what my routine was. My family, we're so close. We traveled together all the way growing up. I was, close with seeing them almost every day back home. It's actually a funny story. We pulled the moving truck in. I was driving a 98 Camaro at the time. I unload the Camaro from the moving truck trailer, and I get in my car, I start it up, and my radio is static. I'm like, uh-oh, like this is not good. none of my radio channels work. I'm like, I'm far from home. I know I've done messed up. So right off the bat, it was just a change for me. I was only 21. I was broke. I had spent all my money moving here. I didn't have a job. I would try to get a job in racing. I would go into these teams and give them my resume. Of course, they don't know who I am. They don't know why this girl's in their lobby handing them some paper resume that has companies on it that they've never heard of. And they don't have time for me. So as I watched my resume be thrown into a trash in front of me, I realized working and trying to be a part of the sport was going to be a lot harder than I maybe anticipated. Not that I thought like the seas were going to part as soon as I moved there, but I thought like, hey, maybe I'll get an opportunity. And those did not come easily. So I had to get a job right off the bat when I moved here to pay for bills. So I actually had got a job at David's Bridal, who was hiring to be a wedding dress consultant, which I don't know why I thought I wanted to do that, but I was like, hey, this is better than working in the restaurant industry. And
Well,
that was
you're typically working with ladies who are in good mood. You know what I mean? For the most part.
yeah.
I guess you got the crazy ones out there. They got, the bridezillas or whatever they call them.
Yeah, the ones that just really want to get married that maybe don't like their groom. Those were hard to do.
I bet there's some good stories there.
And I'm sure, and like that moving, being the outsider and not like literally growing up right there. A lot of the people that grow up in the Mooresville area have the inside track. And I feel like once you moved there and you took a foot in the door job, that's when things started opening up. I would have to guess. You take something and then you get the ball rolling.
Yeah, that's kind of like what leads me to the next part of this story. So I'm working at David's Bridal. I hate it. And I go online and I see that there's this opening for Charlotte Motor Speedway, an intern. I wasn't in college anymore, which is typically what they require. But I applied for it, like hoping that maybe I would get the internship anyways to meet people around this area. And I did end up getting it, but it was unpaid for 3 months. And I'm like, and it was full time. It was 40 hours a week. So I'm like, wait, how am I going to make this work? So I take it and I'm there for about under a month. And I go to this warehouse and I meet someone. I'm with a friend. I meet someone there who just this older gentleman. I get to know him, tell him where I'm from, tell him, hey, I just moved here. I'd love to work in racing. And we're just chit chatting. He leaves and later tells my friend, hey, can you give me Jacklyn's information? I want to recommend her for a job opening at Roush. And I'm like, what? I had no idea this guy even worked at Roush. Like, that's what you needed. You needed someone to open the door and let you in. So his name was Carl. He actually recommended me for a job opening there as a graphic designer, which I had experience in. And I went in and interviewed and I ended up getting the job, and that was my foot in the door. And what's really crazy is I really had to take something that was no pay, that didn't really lead me into something that I thought it would. And then it just happened to work out by meeting someone at a rental warehouse. So it's weird how the things do end up coming together over time. You just have to have faith in it.
Yeah, because you move to that area and you say, I want to get in racing. Well, it's kind of like going to Hollywood to be an actress, or an actress, rather. You literally are moving to Mooresville to be in racing. We're all in racing, or Charlotte, the greater Charlotte area, whatever you want to say. Everybody's in racing. It in some way feeds that sport.
Yeah, and exactly what you said. Like, you're very hopeful that it'll work out, but it doesn't just come together. And the thing that I had always said to myself was, if I can get at one door open, I can get in there and I can show them what I can do. And I know that my skill set and I'm positive enough and I'm a good employee that I can get hired. I just have to get in the door first. And that's the hardest part, is like helping people get in the door. And now, like, that was 10 years ago at this point. But now when I look back there's people that are younger that need someone to help them get in the door. I'm like, here it is. I'll open it right up for you, because I didn't have someone doing that for me.
And it's really a random story. I don't even know if I've ever told the other guys this. Me and my buddy used to go to Charlotte a lot for buying race parts, different things, in late 2010-ish, somewhere in that time frame. And we would always go to the Texas Roadhouse right there at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And for whatever reason, we would always go there. We didn't have one up here at the time, so we would always go there when we were getting ready to head home, and we'd have dinner. And once or twice a month we'd be down there, and it was always this one waitress. And we always picked her table. We knew her name, Kirby. She always waited on us. And I don't know, we didn't see her anymore. We'd seen her 2 or 3 times, just remembered, spoke to her. And she was trying to do something similar, get into the PR work with NASCAR. Same thing. It was very difficult. She was inching her way in. And I started a couple years later, I started helping Jimmy Means in the Xfinity Series. And we're walking through the garage, me and the same guy, walking through the garage. And I said, I seen her walk by. And I'm like, well, he did something. That's Kirby, remembered her name. And she was working for Turner Motorsports. I think it was Turner Motorsports at the time before Harry Scott bought them out. And, went on and seen her there. I think I started following her on Twitter. She ended up marrying Jeff Gordon's gas man. It's just random. She got in, got into the business, and then married into the business. And I can't remember the guy's name. I think the last name's Gordon. I can't remember what her maiden name was. It's just random stories how people get in there and they keep working. And actually, she was from Wisconsin. That's why it was so random a story. She come all the way from Wisconsin to Charlotte to work in the NASCAR industry. Same situation. I thought it was a random cool story.
Yeah, that's really cool. Did she remember you when you saw her?
I never spoke to her. I didn't want somebody like some creepy stalker or something. I remember
actually, if you put it into a different context.
And that's what kind of creeped me out. I'm like,
in other words, he chickened out. You didn't want to say anything.
Yeah, I did.
I can see that. Well, and it kind of goes, and I'm glad you shared your story. It goes back to a lot of things we've talked about on this show many, many times about, finding ways to get that foot in the door and kick it open. I mean, for us, about that's eight months ago, we're struggling to figure out who we're going to bring on the show next and what we can do to spice things up and get things interesting. And we had a local modified legend on here, Satch Worley. The guys, everybody in NASCAR modifieds, anything up and down the East Coast knew who this guy was for years and years, and still to this day do. Next week we get Chris Williams on because he heard the show, and that door was right there, and he opened it up for us. And the people we've had on there ever since, it's been, racing has become our niche, and it's exciting to have these racing people on here because they have so many great stories like you do. And I guess that's a good segue into something we can kind of talk about here since we got you on here and we like talking racing. What are your thoughts? And forgive me for even mentioning, we can't use the next gen car. We can't say next gen around Jeff because he'll go, maybe he'll go on some kind of spill about the transmission or tires or something. But what are your thoughts on everything from this NASCAR season so far?
I think, one of the cool things about NASCAR, which, they are my employers. So I have seen such a energy within the office of wanting to try new things. As time goes on, that's kind of like part of life. You got to try new things. And kicking off this season at LA Coliseum was one of the coolest things that I've ever seen the sport do. And to be in a position to where how much work has gone behind the scenes in order to make that event happen, I really do applaud them for doing it, and then it paying off for all the hype and the viewership. So this season has been really interesting just to see how the changes are panning out. You got a new car, you got new number placement, you're going to new places, we're trying new things. We have a new challenge for drivers, a new challenge for pit crew members. That's really exciting to see, especially as someone who has been a fan and has watched just on the TV for years. And then now you go to the track and you're coming into this new revolution of the sport. So we're seeing it firsthand that down the road, decades from now, kids will think back and that will be their 80s and 90s in NASCAR, what they see today.
Did you get to meet Ice Cube in LA?
No. That would have been a highlight.
No.
Well, for me, being a casual fan, and I'm going to let Bodine chip in next because he is much more thorough when it comes to it. But as a casual fan and somebody who's kind of found my way back into racing recently, I like the racing. It's been pretty good so far. I mean, I find myself tuning in and kind of watching and paying attention more than I have in recent years. And it's good to see the parity of, the Ross Chastains of the world, Cole Custers, these guys running up front. Seeing Richard Petty's car back up front running well again. It's like Bodine has said many times on here before, it's kind of leveled the playing field, and I like that. The one thing I don't like about it, though, is I guess basically these cars are what, crates, Bodine, essentially. It's a kit. So you're really missing out on a lot, like all these stories.
Which there's two fields of thought on that. In my personal opinion, when I look at stock car racing, what we've been running for the last 25 years isn't even close to a stock car. They, from the Twisted Sister primarily to the COT, they were the furthest thing from a stock car. Essentially, going back to what they did is no different than a real stock car, because you're literally buying the kit from a manufacturer. Just because this manufacturer isn't Ford, Chevrolet, or Toyota, you're buying it like this. You put it together, you race it. To me, in theory, it's the same thing as old NASCAR prior to mid-'80s. I need Julian Austin here to tell me that date when we switched wheelbases and really went away from actual stock cars that come off the showroom floor. You wouldn't race a stock car these days because it's unibody. I mean, nobody would race a car today in the right mind at 200 miles an hour. So there is some practical, in my mind, it's a lot like what it used to be. And definitely now your experience with car stores and stuff, the late models, essentially the same thing. You buy you build your engine, you buy the body from 5-star and you go racing. I think it's a lot of parity to lower motorsports ranks now compared to what it used to be. Yeah, in depth. I did go in depth.
Where'd the Crumb Snatcher go? Oh, there he is.
I was doing something.
Yeah. I like the racing. I think the racing's been pretty good. What's been your favorite race so far?
My favorite race so far, I really did like COTA. I like to see the road course. I've never been a road course person. I've always been like, I'm only circle track. We only turn left. But I really did enjoy COTA. And then obviously seeing the ending and how that translated for Trackhouse and Ross, like those moments are cool. And I do think road course racing adds another layer to that driver portfolio that we typically haven't seen in the past, to where they can shine. Like people that you don't see run up front every week, you can see them run up front in a road course because they know how to drive a road course. So that always like dices it up and makes it pretty interesting.
And we didn't get a fair shake on COTA last year in the rain. I mean, we didn't really see anything. I always wanted to see Cup cars run in the rain. It was the biggest, most anticlimactic letdown that I've ever experienced in my life, actually finally seeing them race in the rain.
Oh, come on, Bodine. I'm sure you've had worse letdowns before.
You never know. I mean, as far as racing goes.
Oh, okay.
But
I know you're dating life. I'm just saying. I know you're dating.
So, I think Billy, and I try to connect Billy because I think the competition's been great in NASCAR for several years, but I think that there's been a disconnect between fans and the new personalities in the sport. When we were kids, it was Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, and we were like them. We were more of the blue collar guys. We could relate to Dale Earnhardt. And the modern guys, you have a hard time relating to them one-on-one. You really do. And it's hard to really put it in perspective, and you really gotta, I don't know, I guess you gotta follow them on Twitter. You gotta see what they're about, and I think what that's kind of really, I think that's why Billy's more interested this year, is because the podcast has kind of brought it back and renewed some of that spirit in him. I really do. Now, Martinsville, he didn't like Martinsville. I did, but to me,
nobody liked Martinsville. You were the only.
I'm the only guy that enjoyed Martinsville because but anyways, regardless of which, there's been a lot of changes in the NASCAR world in the Cup Series. And NASCAR is not afraid to do anything. That's what's different. That's what's important. We've talked to Steve Post. What's crazy about NASCAR this year, or the last 2 years, I'll say, because the pandemic really triggered all this. I think that comeback to Darlington in the 2 races post Atlanta shutdown, I think that changed everything. I think when you come back and you had those 2 races at Darlington, and they seen people were interested to racing, man, it's pretty cool. It's different. We shook things up. And it forced NASCAR into realizing, man, if we think outside of the box like we've been forced to with COVID, we can really shake things up. It was a cookie cutter schedule before. And now we're seeing different. It's crazy to think that last year we raced on Daytona's road course, and then we went to Bristol dirt. The possibilities have become endless. And now with NASCAR, I got the cats meowing. She's got the dogs barking. I am more excited about Nashville Fairgrounds than I've ever been in any track in my entire life. I think it looks so awesome, and what the future holds there. I think that's where a lot of the parity's going. The interest.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point. Let's not forget they've completely eliminated practice and qualifying for over a year at this point, to where drivers now are having to rely on simulators way more than they had to before. We were broadcasting iRacing events, and as real racing, the drivers were involved. I know you'd hit on the drivers' personalities. I think social media, as long as the drivers are leaning into it and making it their own, can be a place where the new fan base can really get to know them with TikTok and Twitter and their reactions. And you see the drivers on there sometimes arguing on Twitter with each other, poking fun, or, Junior posting selfies of people that are embarrassing, or whatever the case may be. I think that social media does allow them, as long as they are able to and willing to show a different side of them that maybe we didn't get to see back in the day with those other drivers, like Dale Earnhardt. He would show up at Denny's on a Friday night and say hey to you and hang out, versus now the drivers can maybe go live on Instagram or post videos of their pets or their other racing endeavors or time on the boat and other things. So technology has definitely changed everything in everyone's lives. It's just utilizing that and getting to show who they really are outside of just the race car. And I think too, like when drivers can go and interact with the fans, you'll see them compete in these other short track events. Like Byron, he's racing late models at New Smyrna earlier this year, and then at Nashville, and he's going to these other places and competing. And then when they're at those tracks, you get to see them relax, because when they go to the Cup races, they got one thing on their mind, and it's go in, do my job, and leave. And so you kind of see him on these other levels, even with Kyle Larson, stays for hours after the races at these dirt tracks and signs autographs and meet and greets and all these things. So I think they have personalities. They just have to show them.
Even if they're not perfect. And this is kind of a little controversial, but I'll say it anyways. With what happened with Kyle Larson and now Denny Hamlin, I think it's almost good to see. From a fan standpoint, I know it's not great, and it's not, you always see it's not always rosy and rose colored. They're human, they make mistakes. And we used to see that. We used to see the blue collar guys make mistakes, and then they just got all polished and refined. The Jeff Gordon era truthfully ushered that in. The guys like Hendrick Motorsports wouldn't let the guys race. They couldn't go to the local short tracks race. They couldn't do this. But as times changed, as the simulators, less practice. I mean, we've been on a testing ban long before COVID. I mean, we just don't test anymore. And you had to start thinking outside the box and start letting these guys start race short tracks, local short tracks, because they were, they just weren't getting to practice. And it costs so much to take a cup car to the track and practice and test. And oh my God, the amount of practice we used to have, hours and hours. We can sum it up in an hour just like they do at short tracks. You spend all this time on the rigs and at the wind tunnels. Just it's perfect like it is. I love the lack of practice. And I love hearing Kyle Busch complain about it. I love it. It is the best part of it is finally we've got Kyle Busch being the heel and he's got something legitimate to complain about, but nobody really cares. Because everybody else has got to do the same thing. If you want to compete, go out like Kyle Larson and run every single night of the week. This kid can race everywhere. I don't know how he does it. And it's amazing to see it. And William Byron is doing the same thing. He's starting to catch on to that. I honestly, if you scheduled a dirt race every night of the week during the summer, Kyle Larson would be every one of them if he could make it work.
I'm a short track lover. I grew up on short track. I cover a lot of short track. I think that's where you find the start of a love of racing, right? Someone goes out on a Friday night, $5 to get in. Their friend drags them out there. They go to the dirt track or the asphalt track and they buy a hot dog or popcorn and 2 cars take each other out for the lead. 3rd place wins. I mean, things like that you see at your local short track are going to give you the impression and the love of motorsports and then trickling it through other ranks. That's, you see F1, you see NASCAR, you see all these other types, World of Outlaws, these big series. They don't start without someone going to a local short track and seeing what racing is all about. So I'm all for short track. And I think a lot of the time, these drivers, cup drivers, Xfinity drivers, truck drivers, they go into these lower series because they genuinely love racing. They grew up racing somewhere out of track, California, or in the West, or over here in the East, or up North. They grew up somewhere. Someone took them at one point to a track. So when they get to go back to their roots, and especially when they're a better driver and they can go back and kick butt in late models that maybe they couldn't kick butt at before they moved up the race, like that gives them confidence. And I truly believe it makes them fall back in love with the sport.
It does. And I'm going to relate this in 2 ways, because we were talking about social media and the fans' ability to access drivers. And this is a newcomer, and I might be biased, but I'll be honest with you. Haley Deegan made a comment in an interview the other day. Is she considered social media a job in itself? Well, she's built a social media empire from her Twitter, from her Instagram to her TikTok and YouTube. And what she's done is she's able to showcase where she's racing all the time as well and going out. She's been able to turn it into a job, literally. And that's what she said in the interview. And I find that an interesting aspect, because it just would have never been, it was unheard of before. And that's what we're focusing on. And it's keeping her name out there. It helps with sponsorships, and it keeps her sharp on trying to get better on the track.
Yeah, I definitely think social media, I 100% agree. It's changed the evolution of sponsorship. We're getting into like a marketing side here, but your digital presence at the end of the day does mean something, and it does have a money value behind it when it comes to being an athlete or an influencer or whatever it is online. So these drivers can really use their platforms for good to help them move up in their careers if they choose to do so, and if they use it the right way. When I was racing back, 13 years ago, 15 years ago, that would have helped me get sponsorship money, like definitely. And so now drivers really can use it to their ability, as long as they use the tools that they have that essentially are free. Social media is free. You have the control. As long as you go out there, you put yourself out there and you're consistent, it can pay off.
Well, and it goes back to what you all were talking about with the short tracks and these guys. And I've seen Chase Elliott go out here and race some of these local races as well. It has to go hand in hand. You get guys out there that are NASCAR fans, casual, that recognize a name like Carl Larson or Chase Elliott or William Byron, or maybe some of these guys who jump into a smart mod race, and you go out to the track and you think, well, man, this is a great time. I'm going to start coming here every Saturday night. And then that fandom starts building, as you all said, bringing friends here and there and going and seeing this. And then you're paying more attention on Sunday. And then maybe you're paying more attention on the internet to guys at other tracks to try and keep up with them and see how their careers are progressing. And one hand kind of guides the other. And I think it's really important, as you all were talking about social media and how it kind of all intertwines. It's necessary. If you want to get NASCAR back to how it was 10 or 15 years ago, you got to get short track racing back to what it was 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah. That's one thing. There's two things I was going to say real quick. And I know you said you were working for NASCAR now, and I know something to do with NASCAR roots, and I wanted you to get to explain that a little bit to us also. And then me and Billy were both laughing that Jeff brought up Haley Diggin. He secretly has a major crush on her. So, and I laughed. I was listening to you guys' podcast with her a while back, and about fire suits and all different stuff today. Yeah, I had a good chuckle out of that today. So, but yeah, if you explain like the NASCAR roots and different stuff like that you're working with now.
Yeah, so the department that I work in at NASCAR is heavily involved in NASCAR roots, and particularly the broadcasting side of it. So there are tracks all across the country that are NASCAR sanctioned. And as part of that, they're in programs with Advanced Auto Parts, with their weekly series racing. And we have 16 tracks that are weekly streaming on Flow through the NASCAR sanctioned on their platform. So through that partnership, which just announced and came about starting this year, it's a 3-year deal. Flow and NASCAR are giving money back to every track that's on the broadcast platform. There's also tracks that are NASCAR sanctions that's getting money back because they do believe in the sport of short track, or the ability that short track racing builds the sport long term. So it was one of probably my proudest moments going and attending the press conference for this program. My manager and I, we helped the partnership, build this partnership with Flow. And we had the press conference in Nashville in December during the NASCAR banquet, which I got teary-eyed and goosebumps when they announced it. And because again, me coming from a short track world, coming from how I grew up, I really understand how much finances really mean to these tracks. So the fact that I knew exactly what's going to happen with this partnership and with the money and where it's going to go can literally move mountains for some of these facilities that really do need it in order to help build the sport. So that was one of the coolest things I've done. And as we continue on through, my day-to-day is partnership, marketing with them, media strategy, particularly in the streaming side. And then I also do work with IMSA and American Flat Track. So there's a lot of other cool, fun things that I get to do, but the roots side is where my heart lies. My boss knows it too. I get so worked up about stuff. He's like, okay, I know, Jacklyn, this is your field. But it's really fun because I do understand what these tracks and drivers and what they need just from being involved in it.
So it makes me think, because this year Bowman Gray popped up on Flow and they were adamantly against it for years. I mean, you would see, I think the opening race would be streamed. It would be the only one throughout the season you would see, and then no more. That would be it. You just, if you weren't at the track, you missed it. Do you think the mentality's changed, that we know how local short tracks are crucial to the sport and the roots of the sport? You think promoters are embracing that theory, thinking, well, I mean, even though we're not going, the theory was they weren't going to get people in the seats if they sold it on TV or if they put it on streaming online. And Bowman Gray was the last holdout, it seemed like. And now they're full time in it. Has the mentality changed, you think, thinking, well, we can dip into both pools, especially with NASCAR?
Yeah, it definitely, I don't want to say it's completely changed for everyone, but I have seen a lot of tracks come on board because the inevitable is here. Digital streaming, social media, the internet is not going anywhere. It's only becoming more and more as you see different apps pop up here or there of streaming. You can, all sorts of things. You can buy a subscription for it and you can stream it on your TV now. The smart TVs, the Roku devices, all of that. It's not going anywhere. We're moving towards that. People are leaving satellite. They're going to streaming. So whatever you can do to keep, I think, your facility moving towards the direction of the future, because that you hit on something right there. People that are watching it that can't come to the track, those people could be anywhere. International, California, they can be on the other side of the world watching, and those people are still fans, even though they're maybe not in the seat at the track. They are going to tell their friends about it. It's going to continue to build, and eventually they're going to come to the track, or they're going to like them on social media, or they're going to buy a t-shirt from them online, or whatever. It's still building your fan base. And I know you guys brought up the car store earlier, but that has been essentially the car store mentality ever since the beginning, which was 7 years ago, because they developed their own streaming through Pit Road TV and had car store TV. The mentality of, yes, you may not be at the track, but we're building a global fan base that can watch us every single race ends up being the long-term goal in my mind.
Dean, how was your car store trip this week?
It was rainy and wet. We seen them drag a few tires across the track, but we never seen their race cars Friday nor Saturday.
And who went down there with you? Was Julian?
Julian went with me. Yeah, we got to eat whiskey peach tacos, and that was about it. That was probably the best thing we did. But it also goes back to making that connection. Me and Keely Dubinsky had been talking back and forth, and it was nice to meet her and make that connection and show that we showed up and we were there, trying to see the show. But I guess we'll re-rack them and try May the 21st now.
Yeah, for anybody listening to this show, by the way, now that you mentioned that, much like we had a couple of weeks ago for the smart mods at Franklin County Speedway, we're going to be set up in turn 2 again. We're going to be talking Cars Tour, anybody that drops by, Callaway Racing, and anything that goes on just like the last time. So it's going to be a good time. We're also going to try and set up right there in turn 2, maybe like a pop-up tent and have a little tailgate or something after we get off the air. So anybody listening, show up there, support your local tracks. Once again, Franklin County Speedway, they'll put on one hell of a show. The Cars Tour will up there. They'll do it again, and we'll be up there. So when you listen to this show, make plans.
And I wanted to hit back on one point where you, I think, and you've seen it more with the local promoters, owners, they were scared to tap into that because they was afraid it would take away from attendance. But I think true race fans, if they're near the track and they can go, they're going to be at the track versus watching it on stream anyways. I don't think you lose attendance, at least not now. As long as you're keeping it going, you keep a little controversy at the track, you got to. You're not going to lose your actual attendance just to streaming. If anything, you're cutting your nose off to spite your face, because nowadays you're going to get more attendance from streaming those events. And Flow Racing is doing it. I mean, it's a great app. The way it's set up, the Flow, the way they're putting stuff together really is good, and it's fairly simple. So I think the old timers and stuff that would kind of be scared from it, want to watch Bowman Gray from California, for example, or anywhere like Martin's, the Car Store is Ace. Who does the Car Store? Who streams it? Is Flow doing it, or they got their own?
Pit Road TV streams the Cars Tour TV.
Like I say, the guy hears about it in California, wants to watch them and check them out. He can be a fan from anywhere. He can't go to the track, but you're tapping into a few dollars that's going to flow right back to the Car Store that would not have normally.
Yeah, I mean, my best metaphor is, do you not go to a concert because you can listen to the music on your phone?
Great point.
Great point. Yeah, it is perfect.
I want to go to a concert because I want to see them live, just like I want to go to a race because I want to see them live. Just because I can listen to their music doesn't mean I don't want to go to the concert.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about flow and the reach, and with the newborn here at the house, sometimes I'm sitting on the couch shaking him, and I'll flip through Flow. And a couple of weeks ago, I'm sitting there watching the Arca West race or whatever it is, and it was a fantastic looking track in California that I'd love to see some other series run on that I'd have never otherwise knew had I not just tuned in. Late night, kind of finding something to watch, and things like that really get people interested and get people. I want to take a road trip up to Stafford. I'd love to go up there and watch a modified race, just based off of the social media here recently and the people sharing and talking about things like that.
Yeah, those are both great facilities, both on my list as well. I've been to Irwindale. I haven't been to Stafford before, but both beautiful facilities.
So what is your favorite short track to go check out?
So my favorite short track is still Orange County Speedway, which is in Rougemont, North Carolina. There's just something about that track. I got to practice on it last year. I was planning to race there, and they ended up canceling a bunch of their events with tire shortages and everything. But that track is so unique. It has banking. You can drive it in super hard, and it slows the late model down. It's crazy. I can't help but love Orange County.
Haven't been there yet.
I've seen about it.
We need to ask Julian's question. That's why I was just looking at. Wonder how many racetracks you've raced at, how many you have covered, and what's your favorite dessert at one of the racetracks? That was Julian's question.
Julian and the dessert. Yeah.
Yeah. Julian had to have a food question.
Favorite dessert? That's tough. I don't even know where I have to really think about that. I've raced at 3 different tracks. Well, I've driven 3 different tracks as far as in late models: Houston, Southern National, and then I've drove on Orange County. What was the second one? Favorite short number of tracks I've covered.
Yeah, how many tracks have you covered?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It has to be at least 100. I've been to so many. I'd really have to sit down and count. Every year I count out how many tracks that I visited in total for the year.
He was probably hoping you had like a counting ticker in your head like Steve Post. Who, to be fair, I mean that's a tough comparison. I'm pretty sure Steve Post wakes up in the morning and mainlines racing into his veins somehow. I mean, he's at a different track every night. So
he really is. He really is. Steve, I love him. He's such a lover of motorsports, which is great to see and always fun to be around. I have to write mine out at the end of every season, and then I figure out which ones I haven't been to. But I'm sure he far exceeds me. Definitely. He goes to so many all the time.
He really makes you want to go to those tracks. He does a really good job. I mean, I love following him on social media and seeing all the different places he visits and the food and things like it. It really makes you consider taking road trips just for the simple fact of catching something different and unique.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of my goal as well. Like anytime I go to a track I've never been to, I always like to showcase them on social media for that reason, right? People that maybe have never seen and want to check it out. And I know you're asking me favorite dessert, but I'm sitting here thinking about it. And I don't think I have a favorite dessert. I have a favorite food for sure. That's at Langley. They have this like barbecue garbage can or something. They call it something crazy with barbecue and fries and a whole mess of stuff that's cheesy and delicious. But I can't think of a dessert. That's a fail on my part.
That sounds like a fantastic meal to make and a good trip to Langley. They're going to be doing the heat again this year, correct, Dean?
Yes, that is correct.
Well, you sold Julian at barbecue if you knew it.
Yeah. He'll be good.
Hold on. Since we're on Julian right now, I mean, mayonnaise, yes or no?
I like mayo.
You lost him.
Yeah, you
lost him.
Hang on. Do you guys like Triple Whip?
I mean, it's tolerable. We can do it.
It's all the same.
I'd rather get mayonnaise.
I'm not huge on the difference in them. I'm not like a mayonnaise snob, but yes, I do like Miracle Whip because I like making chicken salad because it's a little spicier. There's a little something different to it.
Oh, I've never done.
It's on just a sandwich, whatever.
Matthew and I, Dillner, when we were at Bowman Gray, we were up in the booth and I was like, hey, I need to go grab some food real quick. And this was before we went on air. So anyways, we got to talking about hot dogs and what we like on hot dogs. And I said, I like ketchup on mine. And he almost
Cardinal
he's like, that's not how you eat a hot dog.
Ketchup and mayonnaise has no place on a hot dog.
I don't put mayo on it. Just ketchup.
No, some people do though. My wife being one of them.
Load them up, everything, whatever you. It doesn't matter to me. You can look.
Chili cheese dogs are good too.
The chili cheese.
We found out Dillner does not like mayonnaise either.
He's not. Well, no, he wouldn't. He pull it out like Julian. Julian rolls it out as like
right.
Dylan was like, maybe like chicken salad or potato salad or something. Yeah,
you know what? Since she took us back to Bowman Gray and being in the booth with Dillner last week, we would be doing ourselves an injustice if we didn't bring it up. But our boy was less than 1/8 of a mile away from the checkered flag. Paul Hall. What in the world? What in the world happened? Why? What's the deal with that caution?
Debris on the track.
There was debris on the track. I don't know how long it was there for. I was looking at the action on the track, but there was debris. There was grass and dirt and a whole mess. I know fans on Facebook are going off about it afterwards because he really did have a good car, and he was about to win, but that chrome horn, it'll get you.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, God, coming into turn 3. I mean, I thought the white flag, the next flag was the checkered no matter what. Is that not the Bowman Gray rules, Bodine?
It must not be. I'd have to read back the rule book, but I can tell you, I've asked people that run at Bowman Gray and work at Bowman Gray. I said, what was the deal with that? And the exact words were, the race at Bowman Gray is not over to the tower says it's over. So you just take it for what it's worth. They've got such a unique thing down there. I mean, it's just they've done it, and I want to go back more now. But even though Paul, I don't know, I ain't gonna say he got screwed, but he got screwed. I want to go back even more now because of that. It no sense, and they know that. Gray Garrison is no fool.
And I see that's what I told Paul too. I said, look, man, it really sucks. I said, losing like that, but on the bright side, more people are probably talking about you now after that finish than they would have if you just went ahead and won. Because if you won, people would have just created this narrative. Well, you just went out there and ran up front for 25 laps and held the bottom, but you lost. And now everybody's focused on how you lost. And people are talking about you. That's more sponsorship opportunities. Look, we're always looking to help out Paul Hall. He's our buddy, the old firm flicker. So, hey, I'll be tuning in the next race they cover just to see. And are you going to be at Bowman Gray anymore in the booth with Mr. Dillner for the rest of the year?
I am. I am scheduled to be in the booth 4 more times this season, which is super exciting. I'm fairly new to the booth life. I'm typically a pit road reporter, or I've done some TV things or grandstand type of, mic emceeing, but I'm hooked. I had so much fun in the booth that I literally cannot wait to go back to Bowman Gray and talk race cars and crack jokes on air. That's fun.
and you get to really know the characters down there. That did you get to spend a lot of time in the pits beforehand down there, or had you before rather?
Yeah. So I went to the pits about an hour before I had to do sound check. And then Matt and I both went to the driver's meeting, which was my first time in there because it's the locker room and everyone's sitting inside the lockers and they're all having their little snide comments and being their typical selves, and they're giving the race control or the race director a hard time. So of course I'm the only woman in there, and I feel like I stand out like a sore thumb, but it was pretty interesting. And everyone, as far as on the competition side, is so warm and welcoming. You can go up and have any conversation with them. They'll tell you anything you want to know, which is great. And I feel really embraced coming into the modified world when I haven't typically covered modifieds in the past.
Have you been to any smart mod races yet? Are you planning on going to any this fall when the season kicks back off?
I have never been to a smart mod race. I don't have plans to go to one, but I can make plans.
You probably, I mean, there got some good races coming up. I guess they'll be back down at Ace and Caraway in the fall, Dean, correct?
Yeah, and Motor Mile, I think. So,
Murder Mile,
couple.
we'll probably be up there for that one. And actually, this is one last thing we can talk about before we get out of here because we don't want to keep you too long. We know you're busy. North Wilkesboro. Let's talk about that. I mean, are you going to be down there for any of that? You're in Carolina. You're bound to have to show up for something.
Yeah, I'd like to go out to North Wilkesboro. I need to look at my schedule. I have a pretty rigorous schedule right now. Like every weekend is booked for most of the next 3 months, just going to different races between my work and my boyfriend's races. So I have to see, but I would love to get out there and check it out. I've never been before. I've only watched their past races, and I'd like to actually see it in person.
The miles are on Monday and Tuesday, correct? They're not even on the weekend, are they, Bodine?
They're in the weekday.
Yeah. So I told the wife, I said, we might go down there and just get a hotel room somewhere in Wilkesboro and stay down there for a couple of days, and might not be able to get them out to the track, but
Yeah, it's Monday and Tuesday that they're supposed to bring modifieds in. And I mean, they're going to run a pretty rigorous schedule there for that short period of time, and then they're going to tear the place down and repave it.
I'd like to get down there for the mods, and I'd like to get down there for one of the dirt races if we could make it happen. But we'll see how it goes.
They don't have dirt late models down there.
Well, it'll be exciting either way.
I mean, that's a big track for dirt late models. I'm thinking that the speed and angle, they're going to be that would be kind of interesting. That almost 311, like that could be interesting.
All right, well, Jacklyn, we've kept you way too long. Is there anything else, Dean or Bodine, you had?
No, Julian covered the food question. That was great. That was a good question.
I mean,
is there anything else you want to talk about, Miss Drake? Would you like to? You got anything to plug? Your boyfriend, what series is he in? Where does he race at? Where can we find him?
So my boyfriend, his name is Tanner Berryhill. So he races Power Eye, USAC. He's racing dirt midgets, and he'll be racing dirt sprint cars as well in 360s, I believe. They're getting one built right now. So that's been fun because, again, I love dirt racing just as much as asphalt. So we've been traveling. He lives here in North Carolina. So we bounce back and forth between my stuff to his stuff and back and here because he's primarily on Midwest racing. So
wow,
he stayed busy.
Well, it sounds like an awful lot of fun. And for everybody out there listening, where can they find you at on social media? They want to get in contact with you or check you out and check out all your work.
Definitely. So my Twitter and Instagram is the one and only JKD. I'm primarily on Instagram. I also have a Facebook page, Jacklyn Drake. So if you want to talk racing, you can message me on there or follow me and we can be racing friends. I feel like I meet so many people in all different types of motorsports online before I ever even meet them in person. So I'm always on there.
Excellent. Well, what you need to do next time is come up here if we can get Dillner and JB and all them boys up here again, take you up to the mountain. We'll fire off the cannon, get Buddy to bring some barbecue up there. And we'll make a time out of it. So don't be a stranger. We certainly appreciate you and appreciate you coming on here tonight. And Bodie and Dean, if y'all want to stick around for a couple extra minutes when she gets off of here, we'll go ahead and end the show. But otherwise, Miss Drake, can't wait to see you again on Flow TV for one of the Bowman Gray racings. I will inevitably not be able to make because I've got an infant.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Thanks for thinking of me. And I will have to redeem that invitation for some barbecue and bonfire or mountainside. Sounds like fun.
Shooting a Revolutionary War era cannon as well. Look, bring your boyfriend, come up here. We'll send you back home with some mountain water and make a heck of a time out of it.
Might blow up some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we got Tannerite too. We'll blow some stuff up for sure.
I love it. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Have a good week.
You too. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. All righty, that was Jacklyn Drake. Fantastic show. Very knowledgeable. We enjoy talking racing on here. We always have a good time with it. And it's good to be able to have these shows sometimes. She seemed like she has that same short track passion as we do, you know?
Yeah, and she's got the roots, which is interesting coming from Texas. Like I said, it's not normal seeing it from Texas. And I think carried on a good conversation. I really didn't know, and I was reading through a profile and stuff, how she's intertwined into NASCAR, the big time now. She's really made it into the sport, and I can see why. She knows her stuff.
Yeah, that was a really fun time. I like this. So, Dean, we appreciate you reaching out to her when he'd hit us up not too long ago, saying that he had her coming on because it was not long, very recently after the race at Bowman Gray, and that's where I'd heard her name, and yeah, she was a fantastic guest. So, Dean, we appreciate you reaching out to her and starting to get the
getting the old fire started.
Hey, Jeff, it was getting ready to happen right there.
Yeah.
I'd like to reach through this computer is what I'd like to do. I can beep it out if I got to, but man, I just lost my daggone train of thought.
We were just getting ready to say that we were getting fired back up here and starting to reach out to a bunch of people.
I'm not going to say what I want to say because I'm not even going to edit that out. That's going to be there for the archives forever. Good Zoom show, really was, and we like talking about the racing. As far as the racing goes, what are y'all's plans here for the upcoming weeks? Other than the Cars Tour race, Bodine, got any plans to go to Bowman Gray?
We need to talk about it and see what plans are for Saturday. We need to look at the weather.
That's going to be the problem. I just watched the weather at 5 and 70-80% chance of rain Friday and Saturday again.
Yeah, and it sucks because they moved I really like to go to Bowman Gray because they kicked the last weekend when it's a big race down there, the big sponsored race like the Haynes 100. Not Haynes 100. But whatever it was a 100-lap feature for this past Saturday night. What they do is they roll it on to the next week. They don't just kick it out and reschedule or nothing like that. They force it over to the next week because they've always got the twin 25 set up. They just knock one of them out of the way because they're kind of the standard run-of-the-mill thing. So I'd love to get to Bowman Gray and actually see that. I haven't been to one of the 100-lap features, but honestly, the 200 is almost too long. So the 25s are too short. So I'd really like to check out the 100, but it don't look like the weather's going to cooperate. We'll see once we get Thursday or so.
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed like I'd like to make it down there once. I texted JB Cole. Of course, everybody knows him. If you're listening, he's been on a handful of our shows. He's the assistant director, I believe, of the Smart Mod Tour. I texted him. I said, "Whose leg does Bodine have to hump for us to get a show down at Bowman Gray?" He said, "I'm gonna go ahead and save you the time." He said they couldn't even get the Dirty Mo guys in there. He said they run a tight ship and they like controlling everything down there. So it's not going to stop you from talking about it. And we enjoy talking about it because
we don't have to be in there to do a show about it.
No, we don't. We can do one out in the parking lot. We can just holler at people. And speaking of which, with Paul going down there now, more and more Franklin County people are going down there. And I was just wondering what the over-under on the amount of races is before Tim Beard gets in a fight down there.
That's exactly what I was going to. How long is it before a Franklin County person is in a fight at Bowman Gray Stadium? It will happen this year because it is getting thicker and thicker down there.
Really?
It is. I mean, I know a lot of people that are heading down there. I'm like, I just hear them randomly talking. They went to Bowman Gray. I'm like, I didn't know you went there. Yeah, been going there for years. I didn't know that. And a lot of that Farrell bunch up there go. It's been kind of a thing for a while, and I didn't know it.
We're definitely going to make our way there at some point in time eventually. And I guess, Franklin County was rained out this past weekend. As far as Darlington is concerned, I enjoyed the race. I really enjoyed the truck race on Friday night. And while we're kind of on that, I just want to give a shout out to Jesse Little. They ended up showing pretty good Young Motorsports. I think he come home in 16th, kept the truck clean. I've enjoyed watching him and keeping up with him, this season since he was on the show, and actually bought one of his little die-cast cars from the weekend. I guess it's the first one he's ever had, and it's a Shriners Hospital. So I thought that'd be a pretty good cause. That's going to be a piece on our studio here coming up soon. And didn't get the autograph version. I figured we'd go in there and get that at some point in time. But
yeah, it's more personal that way.
yeah, and hopefully here in Charlotte at the end of the month, we'll go in there and get to see him and hang out. We'll talk about that more here in the coming. Other than that, do you think? I don't know. We've got some other big news we're kind of pondering and talking about. We've all amongst ourselves kind of come to the conclusion about it. Should we talk about this here today, or just?
Yeah, I think we should. I mean, just going to get it out there, make sense of it, because I think it won't detract away of our main goal of the main podcast. And once we found out that we was having a lot of luck with racing, it kind of takes away from the theory that our initial podcast was to do a lot of local businesses and highlight of whatever topics and stuff you wanted to do, that focus. But having a racing only podcast is really what we need to do to branch out to make sure anybody that's in the audience gets just that. I mean, they may not always want to hear about racing, but we have a special podcast for it. I think that's definitely what we need to start leaning towards. We got a name and everything.
So to put it mildly, I guess we're launching a second podcast here, and I'm not sure exactly when it's going to launch. Kind of waiting on some of the artwork to show up for it to get it going. It's not going to be very complicated or anything like that. We're just going to get together once a week, and we've realized, as Bodine alluded to, that we have a lot of race fans, and a lot of the times when we release shows, the racing episodes tend to do the best. And we're going to be it'll be a loose partnership with the Appalachian podcast, but essentially, with a lot of these guys we've had on the show, we want to bring them in for a Zoom 10, 15, 20 minutes or something once a week, different people, like Jacklyn today, or maybe JB Cole or Chris Williams, something simple. Call in on the phone. We talk about 20 minutes about the previous week and weekend of racing, as well as an extra 20 or 30 minutes of Bodine, myself, Dean, and Julian, just kind of giving our 2 cents about it, kind of talking about it from different perspectives. My perspective as an average fan, Dean's perspective as a gambling man fan, Bodine from the technical side, and of course Julian from the historical side. So, yeah.
I would put Julian's knowledge of racing in general up against most people. I can't believe his in-depth ability to do that, and he will be an integral part of that.
Yeah, it'll be a good time. So yeah, that's the next plans. We're going to release a racing podcast and try and do it once a week and just get different perspectives, talk a little bit of local racing, short tracks. We're going to have a lot of fun with it, essentially, and it's going to be called Deez Lug Nuts, DEEZ Lug NUTZ. And you can find us already on Twitter and Facebook. If you want to go like us there, we don't have any content up yet. We're still kind of working that out and figuring out our first route. But it's not going to take a lot, and it's not going to take long, and it'll be a good time. So we're going to have some fantastic guests on here. Hopefully, you get a guest every single week, and talk about the week in racing.
Yeah, and we're gonna be able to bring some more content. We might be able to share some cool stuff on there that we wouldn't normally. That might just not interested, the regular podcast fans. But
and at the same time, it's not going to take away from this podcast or the long form discussions, because essentially, the more and more people we get connected with on the racing podcast, and more people we get connected with on this show, it invites more opportunity for long form discussion here. You have a guy come on for 20 minutes here or there, every few months on the racing podcast, and eventually he's going to want to come up here and we're going to learn his whole story and hang out and do things like that. So what was that, Dean?
You don't even want to know.
So that's our, that's kind of some big news we wanted to break to y'all. We are going to kind of start something new, something different, and see where it goes. I think we're going to have a lot of fun with it.
Yep, and I think this is a good start to it right here, and in some way, shape, or form. I think what we've done tonight is kind of going to be our model for it, in my opinion. and see what we can build from this. She was a perfect guest to bring in and kind of see the ideas we had. We weren't able to get Julian in on the night, but we will going forward. And
yeah, actually, you know what? It makes sense. I didn't even think about that. Tonight was more of a long form discussion, shortened up just a little bit. We got to know her a little bit and know her story and why she got into racing. It was a fabulous story. I mean, she's quite an interesting person. But for the racing show, we would just bring her in and talk strictly racing. Then you tune back in the next time. We might have her on this show again to talk a bit more of her personal life and things. So it just, you bounce one off each other and you ride it as far as you can go.
Yeah. So anyways, see where that takes us. Hopefully we get that out in the next couple of weeks. We get something lined up here. And I think we use tonight as a way to spin it off.
Yeah. So if you like NASCAR, if you like the smart mods, the cars tour, short track racing, local short track racing, we're going to try and incorporate a little bit of all of that into what we got going on. So
if Dillner just so happens to be listening, I need a Dirty Mo hat, trucker hat. I need one. I looked on the website. I was going to buy one, but they didn't have. I couldn't find one. I see these I need a Dirty Mo trucker hat. So you listen and hook me up. I'll PayPal you the money. Something we get it worked out.
I hope you get that hat, Bodine. I hope he is listening, and I hope he does end up sending it your way. And once again, you know, like I said, you know, we just recently had our 1 year anniversary show. So for him and Chris and JB and a lot of these guys that really made this all possible for us, just wanted to thank them again. And for everybody else out there that listens to us, we really enjoy this. We appreciate it. Go follow us at Patreon. We have a little bit extra content over there from our Lake House episode. We've about an extra 35 minutes. We're going to release the Corey LaJoy podcast on there, the video side of it. I kind of went through iMovie and kind of made a little Corey LaJoy video from that whole entire thing. So you can see us and our reactions and him and different kind of things we can put over there on Patreon. We're going to start doing maybe like 15 minutes a week. I'll get on here and rant and cuss and talk crap about Bodine. He can come in and defend himself if he wants to. Or maybe we'll just sit on here and tell mama jokes about Pam all day. But that's going to be our Patreon. Go over there. It's supported. So, you know, you pay $3 a month and you get some of this extra content and you're supporting us and what we do. Because it ain't cheap. And there's a lot of time and a lot of effort put into all this. And we enjoy it, but we'll take whatever donations we can get.
Y'all got anything else, man? I think we put a good one together here.
Yeah. Other than that, Get on Tap, Twitter, the Appalachian Podcast, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also find us on YouTube at the Appalachian Podcast for some good jokes, some good content, good racing footage from here and there. And other than that, gentlemen,
get out of here.
Thank you all very much. Crumb Snatcher,
Appreciate it.
We'll see y'all here. See y'all here next time. Dean, tell him I'm going to whoop his hind end.